Hello and welcome to Getter Farms. We're back with another episode of the Westby Wisconsin Revised map, and it is now late spring. We finished up a lot of our spring tillage and really catching up on fall tillage in the earlier episodes, and now it's time to get started with our planting. We've got the planter hooked up here, but we don't have any seed yet. So we're going to need to buy that. And before we do that, let's just take a quick look at the calendar here. So it is late spring. Normally we'd want our ground temperature to be up to about 50 degrees for seasons here, but we're running out of spring planting time. We've got a couple of days left here to plant our crops, but it looks like we're going to get some rain tomorrow. And so I'm kind of worried about getting rained out. And so I think we're going to go ahead and get these, get at least some of these planted today. And in order to do that, we need to figure out our seed and fertilizer situation. And so I don't know how much seed this planter holds. I don't know how fast that seed is going to go. And so we're going to just hop in here real quick and buy some and get it delivered. Now, if I go back over here, we've got pallets, which are bigger. So I'm going to buy 2 pallets. And then I think we're going to get 1 container of liquid fertilizer. And then we're going to see how far this goes with the first crop that we plant, and then we'll decide if we're going to just buy a lot more seed and skip the fertilizer, or if we think that we've got enough money here to do some more fertilizing. Now, my money, I should have taken a look at that just before we started, but we've been losing about $75 a day to maintenance upkeep from something that's on the farm. I'm not sure where that's coming from, but when you've only got $20,000 to start with, you notice every dollar going out of your bank account. And so since we've moved forward, to day 6, that's several $100s. So this thing does not hold very many bushels of corn, which is, probably realistic. I still haven't fixed the fact that it kind of leans back here. Things to do. Not enough time for modding lately. And so we're going to just take this over here, and I think actually we're going to start with soybeans on this downhill part over here and see how far we get. Now this whole strip farming thing is still a little bit new to me, so I think what we're going to do is follow the top contour here and see how it goes. And so while we're planting, at least, it should be somewhat easy to kind of follow along because we have multi-terrain angle and it's not going to look awkward. Once the crops grow and everything has its normal north, south, east, west crop facing, it's going to be a little bit awkward when we come in here and start harvesting these crops. So we'll have to think that through a little bit, but I think we're just going to have to understand that, like, if I'm harvesting corn, my snouts are not going to be between the rows on these fields that are kind of following the contour of the land a little bit. So we'll sort through that. Now, this is making me hopeful. The seed and the fertilizer are not going down nearly as fast as I expected them to. So I don't know. I mean, we've got a lot of field left here, so I'm hesitant to claim a victory just yet. But given that we've got leftovers from what we just bought, we didn't even use a full pallet of seed to fill this. I'm hopeful that we'll at least be able to get seed in all of our fields. That would be a huge win. And then in addition to that, if we can fertilize at least a good chunk of our ground at least once. That's going to help with our yields. And it's easier to apply the fertilizer now while we're planting than have to come back and do another pass later on. So I'd just as soon apply the fertilizer here with the planter if I'm able, and give these crops a nice head start. I'm curious if my planter arms work. They do not. Another thing to sort out on this mod as I get time. And so we're going at a respectable clip, 7 miles an hour. This tractor seems to be pulling it pretty well. And so we're just gonna go ahead and get this field in with beans, and then I think on the top of the hill here, where in the flat part, we're gonna try and put corn in, and then we'll probably put beans on the other flat or the other downhill spot. I'm not sure that beans have that much more soil erosion properties compared to corn, but I think that's just what made the most sense to me. I think doing corn in one big chunk up on the top of the hill is gonna be the easiest path for us. I think I'm gonna follow this around the bottom outside edge of this field here and give us a little bit of a headland to turn around on. It's interesting, I've talked to a lot of people since I started doing Farming Simulator, and hear a lot of different methodology for, not a lot, there's a couple of methodologies for planting end rows. And when I was growing up, not growing up, I guess I was, late teens, early 20s, I always saw headlands planted as at the end, after you were done planting the field. In fact, sometimes we would even run over it with a cultivator, like a field cultivator or a digger, again, just to break the soil up and kind of smooth it out one last time before we put the end rows in on the headlands. And a lot of people I've seen plant them first, so that the seed is down before you do your turning around and stuff on it. So that's definitely the easier way from a farm sim mechanic, to just toss them in first. So it's always interesting to me to see, different ways of farming in real life, different preferences in Farming Simulator. I probably wouldn't put these straight up the hill like this. I don't know. I would probably want to just drive off into the grass here when I'm planting these, but it's already done. We weren't paying attention. It's always interesting to me as well. There's so many different farming practices out there that people follow, but at the end of the day, somebody had to experiment with those first and kind of figure out what works and what doesn't, and just kind of go through that process. And that's something that's interesting to me, and you see so many different processes, even in today's world, and farming's been going on for forever, and it continues to change and evolve, and it's just really fascinating to me to see how creative farmers can get, and their own field conditions are unique to them oftentimes, and so something that might work for one farmer in one field is not necessarily going to work for the next guy down the road. So where am I going? We're going to get right back over here on this track. Now, this part of the field is actually pretty straight. I could probably be using GPS to do this if I wanted, but we're just kind of going along doing our thing today. I do wish I had these marker arms working, because that would be really easy for me to follow in cab here. I'm trying to drive on a straight line and follow the edge of what I've already planted is proving a little hard in cab for me right now. So without planter markers to toss down on this thing, I think we're going to have to stay out of cab for planting. So with that, let's go ahead and just time-lapse out the last bit of this field, and we'll check back in when we're getting ready to switch.
Never thought I'd be so far from home. Never thought our love could grow so cold. Never thought we had to run through burning fire. Never thought I had to miss you and I. Life changes as we know it. You do what you can, you just get through it. It's a mystery how people can get by on as little love as you and I. Never thought I'd be so far.
All right, so that's the first of our 3 big strips here, and we didn't even use half of our seed or chemical, which is awesome. I was super worried about this, and I shouldn't have been. We're in a good spot. I guess these, I'm just used to using so much larger equipment, and so the fact that we've got relatively small fields actually is probably a good thing. And so we're gonna come down here and go ahead and keep planting the soybeans, and then we'll switch over and do the corn after. I have been running the clock at 15x, and so I think that's going to be a good speed for us to kind of see how things go here. What I'd ideally like to do in some of my series is get to a point where each episode is like one day from a season's perspective, and maybe I have to play on a slightly longer season scale, but it would be nice to be able to kind of like time box it into a more realistic setup. I'm not doing that in this series necessarily so much as playing around with what that might look like in the future, and so a lot of doing these episodes on YouTube and stuff, there's not always enough time to do the research and figure things out off camera, so we're gonna play around a little bit in this series on camera and just figure out how we might do things more realistically in the future, and just kind of and maybe not realistically is the wrong word, but as I look to create episodes that make sense, right? And I think that, or I feel that if each episode was a day of game time, it might be more fun to kind of follow along and see what's going on. But we'll see. It's an experiment. It might work. It might not. So we're going to play around with that here over the next several episodes and see if I can find what that sweet spot of time is to do that. And, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, we'll try something else. Now, this field is quite a bit bigger than that other one that we just did. So, this is definitely going to use up the rest of what we've got in the planter here, I think. And, possibly even require us to go back up to the yard and refill, which would be, okay. It's a nice thing about having, our only fields are right here next to the farm, so I don't have to worry about having a seed tender or anything to haul stuff out to the fields just yet. At some point we could expand and get some land somewhere else, but for the time being, this is working out pretty good. And I'm really liking the scenery and colors on this map. I think it was well done. I like the hills, being able to look around and have a little bit of variety in my terrain as I'm driving around. We're gonna go ahead and just do this entire pass around the outside. In fact, a lot of the farmers that I watched do a couple of passes around the outside just to give them those headlands. I watched How Farms Work was actually doing that in one of their videos, And they're kind of in this Wisconsin area, some similar looking terrain. And so they went ahead and just kind of did a few passes around the field. I think I'm going to leave the planter down and just finish off these rows straight like I'm going right now. And so that's always, though, the balance to find in these is the realism versus what I can get away with in the farming simulator. But man, if the planting arm or the marker arms on this planter worked, I would be a much happier person, because I'm going to follow this contour around here from a planting perspective, and as soon as I get to the next pass here, I'm going to be struggling to keep it lined up. Which from a farm sim perspective is fine, because I don't have to worry about my crop rows when I get around to harvesting, but it would be nice to do things a little bit realistically. We accidentally hit the lift planter button instead of the in cab button. The other thing I love about this mod, so on the farm we had a 4850 that we used for planting, and it looked very much like this tractor and had the 15 speed in it, the front wheel assist. So this is as close as I could get to, running the planting rig that we used to run in southern Minnesota. We had a nice 12-row planter like this with the double boxes and the chemical tanks on it, and I actually had saddle tanks on the tractor, and that's one of the things I'm hoping some of the modders are going to adopt to the Demco side tanks that are on the mod hub now. That's a really cool mod, and then a few tractors are supporting it, but I would love to see a lot more collaboration between the different modders and have that be kind of a standard option that a lot of tractors are able to accept tanks. Especially these older tractors, it was super common back in the day when I was farming 20 years ago, for a tractor like this pulling a planter to have big we had like the kind of teal green tanks on it. Always putting something down with your seed when you were planting. Make sure that I've got my planter on still here. So this is part of the problem, is my planter doesn't raise all the way up, so I just planted all of that section. So I'll have to work on this mod a little bit more if I'm going to keep using it. It's got a handful of quirks. I don't even remember where I found the original model, but I've been slowly trying to make some changes to get it to a point where it functions correctly. One of the biggest problems is, if I look down here, the 3-point attachment hooks, or not the hooks, the tractor is fine. It's the planter that they just don't line up correctly. Oops, we're getting off here while we're looking at our mod. This planter also originally had two models, one with the rear assist wheels that could help lift the planter up, and I think that's why it's not lifting properly at the moment, is it's waiting for the rear assist wheels to come up and also lift, which I have removed them because the planter that I used did not have rear assist wheels on it. So little things that need to be taken care of at some point. Some texturing work that needs to be done, and that I have not had an opportunity to play with any kind of texturing in FS19 yet, and that's something that has historically been outside of my skill set, so lots to learn there as well. We're chewing through this seed and fertilizer, so I don't know if we're going to need it or not, but I'm guessing we're going to need to refill before we get to the end of this field. It's just, it's going to be close. We'll see. So with that, I think we're going to finish out this field in the time lapse and catch up on the other side of it.
Waiting for you in a town where I've always stuck around. It's always easy when I see someone waiting there for me. When there's a whole lot of love in a home from above. You take your coat off and raise that smile, the one unheard of for 1,000 miles. We share the future just like the past. The good and bad times are gonna last. Well, there's a whole lot of love in a home from above. There's a whole lot of love in a home from above. There's a whole lot of love in a home from above.
So we're coming down to the final few gallons and bushels in the planter here, so we are going to need to do a refill before we can finish the last few swaths here. We came so close to being able to get this all done, so I'm just hoping we can make it back to the end here and be able to drive up to the yard down the driveway entrance here, but it does not look like we're quite gonna make it. We're at about 6 gallons of fertilizer left here in the tank. I think regardless, we're gonna just push for the end row. Oh, we're still making it. Well, look at that. 2 gallons to spare, no big deal. So we'll just fold this up, make it easier to get up to the yard, and finish our last 3 passes. So frustrating when you're just not quite got enough to finish off. Although I guess we could have just not fertilized that bottom little spot, but we have the fertilizer, so I want to go ahead and get it done. And I'm hoping that this seed is going to be enough to finish off the cornfield as well. It'd be super awesome if we could spend all the rest of our money on fertilizer and, you know, spray in general. I don't know if we're going to end up doing herbicide or not still, but we're definitely going to be able to put down some more fertilizer on some of these fields, I think, based on where we're at right now. So that is a welcome surprise. I was expecting to not get as far as we did. We're only at 43% fertilizer. That'll definitely finish up these few passes of soybeans that we've got. And we'll be able to buy another tank before we get started on corn here. Now we are approaching the end of the day here to some degree. It's a little bit after 6 p.m., so I think this 15x speed seems to be about right, at least when we're having to time-lapse out some parts. If I was doing everything in real time, we might want to go up to 30 speed, but we'll see how it goes. Yeah, this is working really well. I like this little planter. It's the right size, it's the right style for the farming we're doing right now, I think, but I just need to finish polishing it up some. It does have dirt mask on it, which I don't know that I realized when I was using it before. I don't know if I just didn't get a chance to use it enough or if I have forgotten, but especially on the chemical tanks, the dirt looks pretty good. On the planter boxes, I might want to do a little bit more with that at some point when I update it, but everything is getting appropriately dirty and dusty as we go here, including my poor tractor. So at some point we may need to find the money to buy a pressure washer. I think the two mod fixes I would do with this planter would be get the planter arms working and then get it to raise up and down appropriately with the 3-point. It's just not quite doing things right, and there's no third 3-point arm attachment at this point, so we need to get this thing set up to be an appropriate 3-point mounted planter. So this is our last round, it looks like. We should be able to polish this off on the way back here. I'll be very curious to check in on things at the end of this first season financially and see just how much money we've been able to make off of this one section of land. We should be able to compare pretty easily, given that we started with a static amount of money. And so this will be a fun experiment to kind of see where hard mode economy takes us in the game. I've never played with hard mode before, I don't think, so kind of curious to see just how hard mode is. The prices don't feel very realistic. I think I was having a conversation with somebody in the comments about that, but you can't just change the selling price for your crops. You have to also look at the price of seed and fertilizer and all those different aspects to really make sure that the economy changes that you're making make sense across the board. And I haven't had enough time to really do some research on what that would look like. You know, I don't know off the top of my head what current prices are for seed corn per bushel right now, you know, so I've got to figure out what the costs would be for actually getting your crop in the ground before I would adjust the game's prices for what I'm selling them for as well. So we're going to go ahead and take a few more bags of this into the planter, and I think I'm going to just leave this right up here in the middle of the yard, and that's going to wrap up today's episode. And next time we'll finish off our planting with some corn on the top of the hill here, which is going to go pretty easily, I think. We may even be able to leverage some GPS to help speed that up, since it's a pretty big, wide open section of that field. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We are going to be able to get into some spraying, it looks like. So that is also super exciting, because I really want to try out this older sprayer here. So We're going to keep plugging along on this map and see how it goes. That's all for today. Kedrick, out.